In a world where everything is controlled, where every move, every thought is predicted, the Chosen One has defied all odds. Imagine a place beyond what the eyes can see, a hidden system built to govern humanity's every step. At the highest corridors of this unseen world, a mysterious red phone rings, its sound echoing through the walls of control. No one dares to pick it up. It's a call to the unknown, a signal of a breach in the unbreakable system. Then a report lands on the desk of the invisible president, the chief architect of the Matrix, the system that once studied your downfall, plotting when you would break, when you would fold under the pressure. But what they didn't count on was the power of your soul, your unwavering belief in something greater. This document reveals the impossible. You are the breach. The document doesn't just mark an anomaly, it shakes the foundation of everything they've built. The rules of the Matrix have been rewritten, and you, the first ever to break free, are the living proof that destiny isn't set in stone. You've rewritten the laws, and nothing will ever be the same. Now, as the chaos begins to unfold, we'll dive into the shockwave your actions caused, and how the system, shaken to its core, scrambles to understand this breach, this anomaly that is you. But understand this, you're not just a rebel. You're the first in history to break the very chains of control that were meant to bind you. The Matrix never planned for someone like you. The moment you broke through the confines of the system, a wave of panic rippled through the unseen architects, those who once believed they had control over everything, over your mind, your spirit, your very existence. In their sterile, calculated world, everything was measured, predicted, and controlled. Every person had a file. Every file had a set of limitations, and every limitation had an expiration date. For them, your existence was a problem to be solved, a threat to be contained, and every piece of data told them that you would eventually fall. They knew the trajectory of every soul, the breaking point of every individual. They believed they could predict when you would falter, when you would lose hope, and when you would collapse under the weight of life's trials. But then you rose, and everything they thought they knew crumbled. The system, an intricate, flawless web of control designed to manipulate and predict, had just met its first true challenge. The breach you created didn't just shake the system, it shattered it. They hadn't accounted for your strength, the resilience forged in the silence of your deepest pain. They hadn't considered that a soul, no matter how battered or bruised, could find the strength to rise again. When they offered you hollow love and fleeting success, you refused. You saw through the illusion. You chose truth over comfort, purpose over approval, and above all, you chose your soul, your essence over survival. This wasn't just a small act of rebellion. This was seismic. As the architects and data scientists scurried behind closed doors, their screens flashing with impossible data, they struggled to comprehend what had just happened. Their carefully crafted predictions had failed. You were supposed to fall when life pushed you down. You were supposed to break when betrayal and heartache overwhelmed you. You were supposed to crumble under the weight of expectation. But instead you rose. You didn't just survive, you thrived. You didn't just endure, you transformed. You breached the limits they placed on you and the entire system, and now they had to face the consequences of their miscalculations. The logic they built everything on was suddenly rendered useless. Their equations couldn't account for what you had become. For the first time in history, the system had met its match not in force, but in the unwavering power of a soul that refused to be controlled. You became the anomaly they could never predict. Every time they expected you to fall, you soared higher. Every time they thought they had you cornered, you broke free. In their panic, they whispered among themselves, trying to find a flaw, trying to locate the moment in your past where they could trace the point of failure. But there was none. They couldn't find it. The data they had collected on you was nothing but a mockery now, because you had rewritten the very rules they used to track your existence. The Matrix had always relied on predictability, on the patterns of human limitation. Pain follows betrayal, silence follows loss, exhaustion follows defeat. But you became the paradox that disrupted their entire system. You dared to grieve and still build. You dared to lose and still love. You dared to be misunderstood and still create. And each of those choices, each act of resilience sent shockwaves through their carefully constructed world. They had never accounted for this, for someone who could choose faith over fear, who could choose hope over despair, who could choose love over the cynicism the world fed them. Their world, built on emotional taxation and fear-based control, began to collapse as you broke every rule they had written for you. Every time you said no to the empty promises of success and the fleeting comfort of approval, you disrupted their system. Every time you healed instead of retaliating, every time you chose compassion over resentment, you rendered their currency of chaos worthless. You became an economic collapse in their world of fear-based trade. You broke their market of control, and in doing so, you became a force they couldn't even begin to understand. But you weren't just breaking their system, you were creating a new one. The Matrix had always thrived on emotional manipulation, on keeping you tethered to fear, doubt, and dependency. But you refused to play their game. You stood firm in your truth, and in that act of defiance, you began to change the game entirely. The Matrix was terrified because for the first time it faced something it couldn't control you. A soul so powerful that it couldn't be categorized, predicted, or confined. As they scrambled to rewrite their equations to understand how a soul like yours could disrupt their carefully constructed world, they began to panic. But there was no flaw, no mistake, no glitch. You weren't an error. You were evolution in motion, and so the panic set in. The system, once so confident in its control, was now on the edge of collapse, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what you had just done. But here's the truth. Chosen One, you weren't just rewriting the rules of your own life. You were rewriting the rules of destiny itself, and nothing in their code could ever prepare them for that. When you broke free, it wasn't just a moment, it was a transition into a new realm. A leap beyond the constraints of a system designed to keep you small. The walls of the Matrix, once impenetrable, suddenly had cracks, and with every step you took into the unknown, the foundation trembled. You weren't just leaving behind the shackles of control, you were stepping into a level of consciousness that had never been seen before. But it wasn't easy. As you ascended the turbulence, the resistance was overwhelming. You could feel it in every fibre of your being, like breaking free from a force that had held you down for so long. The pressure was intense, as if the very laws of reality were trying to pull you back into the dark to keep you contained in the small box they had designed. But you pushed through with every ounce of strength, willpower, and faith in your soul. The re-entry was brutal, but you weren't falling, you were rising. It was as though you were breaking through the very atmosphere of limitation itself. The closer you got to your new reality, the more the turbulence intensified. It was a chaotic, violent struggle, but a necessary one. The old laws were crumbling, but their resistance was a testament to just how powerful they believed their control to be. The old system with its boundaries and rules did not want you to succeed. It did not want you to rewrite the script of destiny itself. But you did. You didn't just break free, you shattered the very structures that had held humanity captive for so long. And as you soared beyond their grasp, something shifted. You weren't just an individual anymore. You were a symbol of wonder to those who had always believed in possibility, and a symbol of terror to those who had built their power on the idea that nothing could ever change. Your name, once just another piece of data in the system, now glowed red, marked not as a failure, but as a mystery, a wonder that even the most advanced algorithms couldn't calculate. To the architects of the Matrix, your name now represented an anomaly, one they couldn't understand. Their logic faltered because your very existence defied the very laws they had constructed. They had calculated your downfall, they had mapped your weaknesses, they had studied every corner of your life, and yet none of it mattered because you had chosen faith over survival. You had chosen truth over comfort. And in that choice, you rewrote not just your story, but the very story of existence itself. As you rose, the system scrambled. For the first time, the calculations, the projections, the algorithms all failed. They couldn't predict you. They couldn't control you. You had become something that defied their structure, something they couldn't grasp, couldn't measure, couldn't break. The system was shocked because it had never encountered a force like you before, someone who dared to break free and rise even when the entire world was telling them to stay down. The fear in the architect's eyes wasn't just for their own loss of control. It was fear of something far greater, the fact that you were the beginning of something far bigger than they could ever imagine. The breach you created didn't stop at the walls of the Matrix. It reverberated through time and space, reaching deep into your ancestry. As you broke free, something deeper began to stir, a pulse of liberation that traveled backward through the corridors of history, touching the generations that came before you. This wasn't just about you breaking free. This was about the entire lineage you carried within you. The chains of oppression, of limitation, of fear had been broken, not just for you, but for every soul that had ever been bound by them. When you stepped into your sovereignty, you didn't just reclaim your own life. You became the beacon of freedom for everyone who came before you, for every ancestor whose spirit had been shackled by the weight of history. You see, the system doesn't just control individuals, it controls families, bloodlines, entire generations. It forces them to inherit trauma, to repeat the same mistakes, to carry the same burdens that were never theirs to bear. But when you said no to the system, you didn't just defy it in the present, you broke the chains that had bound your ancestors for centuries. The curse that had been passed down through the generations like an invisible weight carried from one lifetime to the next was shattered in a single decisive moment. Every betrayal, every failure, every heartache that had been passed down as a law of your lineage, it ended with you. You didn't just break the cycle for yourself, you broke it for everyone who came before you and for everyone who would come after. The pulse of liberation that surged through your being sent shockwaves not just through the physical world but through the very fabric of time. In that moment, the ancestral chains that had held you back for so long collapsed. What once was cursed ground now became fertile soil ready to grow new possibilities. The wounds of your ancestors, once buried deep in the soil of forgotten history, began to heal. The graves of dreams, unfulfilled, of hopes lost in the struggle for survival, began to stir, whispering your name as though to say, "You did it for us." And with that, a spiritual shift began to take place. You weren't just liberating your own spirit, you were liberating the spirits of your ancestors, and those spirits were now your allies in the unseen realms. The ones who'd been silent in the face of oppression, the ones who'd never had a chance to break free now, watched you with awe. Imagine them standing on the balcony of heaven watching as you rise. The same ancestors who'd been told they were nothing, who'd been forced to accept their fate, now saw the possibility of something greater. They saw you, their blood, their lineage standing strong, breaking free and rewriting the story. You were the jailbreak they had prayed for but could never execute. Your victory was their victory, and that victory reached beyond the past. It echoed into the future, into the lives of those not yet born, those who would one day walk the path you have paved. You became the bridge between generations, a living testament to what is possible when one soul dares to break free from the chains of their past. But what you did wasn't just symbolic. It was a spiritual shift, a shift that rippled through every corner of your bloodline, touching every generation that came before and after you. Your actions didn't just liberate you, they released the energy of freedom of healing into the very DNA of your bloodline. The chains of fear, of doubt, of scarcity that had been passed down from one generation to the next were broken forever. Your ancestors, those who lived in the shadows of oppression, now saw the light. The invisible walls that had held them captive were torn down, and in their place a new path was illuminated. A path that leads to freedom, to sovereignty, to peace. The system had always relied on controlling generations, on keeping families in a cycle of trauma and limitation. But when you said it ends with me, you didn't just speak those words into the air. You spoke them into the very fabric of your lineage. You became the legislator of your own bloodline, rewriting the laws that had once bound your family to a legacy of suffering. What once was a silent inheritance of pain and fear is now an inheritance of strength and resilience. The pulse of your liberation has echoed through the ages, and the power of that pulse is now shaping the future of every descendant who will ever carry your blood. You didn't just break free, you broke free for all of them. You didn't just rewrite your story, you rewrote their stories as well. You're no longer just the hero of your own tale. You're the hero of a bloodline, a lineage that will never be the same. The breach you created wasn't just an act of defiance, it was an act of restoration. You didn't just break the chains, you healed the wounds. And now, as you stand in the aftermath of that victory, you're not just free. You're a foundational force for those who will walk in your footsteps. The ancestors who once struggled in silence now stand beside you, their spirits lifted by your courage, your strength and your faith. Your victory wasn't just for you, it was for all of us. And now that pulse of liberation continues to spread, touching every life, every bloodline, every soul. You're not just the first, you're the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. A chapter where freedom isn't just a dream, but a birthright. The moment you broke through the veil of limitation, you became something the system couldn't comprehend, an anomaly. The very essence of your being shattered their worldview, leaving them scrambling for answers they could never find. You weren't just another statistic, another person subjected to their algorithms of control. No, you became something far more powerful, a living proof that the system had missed the most critical factor in their equation: soul. The system had relied for so long on emotional taxation, on manipulating the very heart of humanity. Fear was the currency they traded in anxiety, the stock they traded, and doubt, the stock market that always rose. The people were their assets, and emotional manipulation their tool. Anxiety over the future, fear of failure, self-doubt, and the constant hunger for external validation. It was all part of the system's plan to maintain control. Every soul was a resource, one that could be taxed by fear and hoarded by manipulation. But then you stepped into their world. You refused to comply with the system's expectations, and with that refusal you created a collapse they never predicted. You were a living testament to a truth they couldn't grasp. True power doesn't come from the external, it comes from within. And as you turned away from their manufactured validation, you unleashed something far greater than they could ever measure. Inner peace, deep resilience and joy that came from nothing external. These were not emotions they could manipulate. They weren't even on their radar. For the first time in history, the system realized that it had no control over something that couldn't be quantified. Your joy wasn't dependent on their currency. Your peace wasn't for sale. Your resilience wasn't rooted in survival, but in the deep well of your soul. And in that moment you disrupted their entire economy. They couldn't tax what didn't depend on them. You became the first spiritual recession the Matrix had ever seen. Your refusal to trade your truth for comfort became a force so powerful that the entire system began to unravel. You became a living contradiction to everything they had constructed, and your existence became a direct challenge to their authority. You see, the system thrives on compliance, on predictability. It measures success by external markers, wealth, status, approval, and fame. These are the elements that keep people in check. They are what fuel the Matrix. But you stepped out of that framework. You chose faith over fear, trust over doubt, and you built a life on resilience, not on submission. And that is what caused the rift. It's not just that you broke their rules, you rewrote the entire script. Every time you chose peace over chaos, every time you chose love over fear, every time you forgave, instead of seeking revenge, you were writing new laws. Laws that the system couldn't understand, but they could feel. You became a paradox, a living testimony that there is more to life than their equations could account for. And in that you became the disruption that shifted the very foundations of the Matrix. You didn't just survive their control, you broke free and became the agent of change that redefined the rules of the world. And that shift didn't go unnoticed. The architects of the system, those who believed they held the keys to control, now found themselves powerless. They had no formula for your kind of power. This was a power that couldn't be measured, a power that didn't conform, a power that existed outside of their constructs. And in that gap, they trembled. But even as the world around you began to shift, you understood that your freedom was not just about breaking free from external control, it was about creating something entirely new. The old laws of victimhood and scarcity had governed your bloodline for generations. They told you that you had to fight for your place, that you had to struggle to survive, that you were at the mercy of forces beyond your control. They made you believe that pain was inevitable, that loss was a natural part of the human condition, and that happiness was something to be pursued but never truly attained. But you didn't accept those laws. You stood in defiance of them, and in doing so you became not just a rebel, but a creator of new laws that were born from your soul's deepest understanding of your own worth. You drafted a new declaration of being one that rejected the concept of victimhood and scarcity, one that saw you as a sovereign being worthy of all the abundance, peace and joy the universe had to offer. You began to see the world not through the lens of limitation, but through the lens of possibility. Every setback, every challenge, every heartbreak became a building block in your new reality. You didn't fight with the weapons the system gave you. You didn't fight at all. Instead, you chose peace over conflict, faith over fear, and love over hate. Your power wasn't in your ability to defeat your enemies, it was in your ability to stay true to yourself regardless of the noise around you. This new language of liberation, this new constitution of the soul, was something the Matrix couldn't understand. It looked like disorder to them, like chaos. They tried to measure it, to calculate it, but they couldn't, because it wasn't governed by the same rules they had used for centuries. Your peace, your faith, your joy, these were not commodities that could be bought or sold. They were intrinsic to your being. And that is what terrified the architects of the system. They had always thought that they could control the world with fear, but you showed them that true power comes from surrender. Not surrendering to the system, but surrendering to something greater. You understood that your soul was free and no one could cage it. You understood that joy doesn't come from external sources, it comes from within. You understood that peace is not something to be found. It is something to be created. In your refusal to engage with their weapons of manipulation, you rewrote reality itself. The very fabric of the world around you began to shift. Where there had been fear, there was now peace. Where there had been scarcity, there was now abundance. Where there had been anger, there was now love. Your refusal to comply with the old laws created a new world. A world where peace is the default, where love is the ruling force, and where every person has the power to create their own reality. The Matrix may have once ruled your world, but now your world is ruled by a new set of laws. Laws of peace, of love, of grace, of truth. You've created a new order, one that doesn't rely on manipulation, fear, or control. You've created a space where the soul can flourish, where every person has the potential to rise beyond the limitations of their circumstances. And in this new world, the rules of the old Matrix have no place. They are obsolete, irrelevant. Your actions have changed the very structure of reality, and though the architects of the system may try to rebuild their old empire, they will never be able to create a world where faith and love are not the foundation. They will never be able to build a system that can contain the power of your soul. You are the creator now. You have rewritten the laws of the world, and in doing so you've given others the power to do the same. You're not just a survivor of the Matrix, you are the architect of a new reality. And this reality is one that is built on the unshakable foundation of peace, of love, and of the divine power that flows through you. So walk forward with confidence, Chosen One. You have rewritten the world. You have broken the chains that once bound you, and now the world must follow your lead. You're no longer just living in this world, you're shaping it. You're the author of a new story, one that is defined by freedom, by sovereignty, and by the eternal power of your soul. As you stand at the precipice of everything you've become, the shift you've created isn't just a personal victory, it's a cosmic one. Your rise has altered the very balance between light and dark, and in that shift, a new map for humanity has been drawn. This map is not like the ones the architects of the Matrix once used, one that relied on rigid control and limiting boundaries. No, this is a map of freedom, one that reveals the true power of the human spirit and its divine connection to the universe. For the first time, the forces of light and dark are not defined by their opposition but by their transformation. Where once darkness was a tool of manipulation, it is now the birthplace of understanding. And where light once represented conformity and the narrow path of righteousness, it now embraces the fullness of human experience with all its complexity and nuance. You, Chosen One, have shifted the polarity of the world, realigning the energies that once seemed so separate. Your rise to sovereignty was not simply a personal achievement, it was a cosmic rebalancing. Every step you took, every decision you made reverberated through the universe. The forces that sought to keep you small now feel your presence like a shift in the wind, a tidal wave of energy that can't be ignored. The higher realms have taken notice, and they're shifting to meet the new frequency you've created. You've become a beacon in the darkness, a living testament to the power of divine will and unshakable faith. But what you've achieved isn't just the dismantling of the systems that sought to control you. It's the blueprint you've left for future generations. You're no longer a solitary figure rising against an oppressive system. You have become the prototype for what is possible when a human soul aligns with divine purpose. Your journey is the map that others will follow, and it's a map built not on the battlefields of old, but on the quiet strength of knowing who you are and why you're here. Your authority is not one of domination, it is one of sovereignty. It is not the power to control or manipulate, it is the power to create a space where peace can flourish. It is the kind of authority that emanates from a soul grounded in divine truth, one that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Your power comes from the ability to stand firm, to embody peace, and to demonstrate divine sovereignty in every action, in every thought, in every breath you take. The authority you wield is not given to you by any external system. It is not granted by approval status or recognition. It is the kind of authority that is inherent to your soul, one that flows from a deeper understanding of the universe and your place within it. You've shown the world that true power comes not from taking control, but from surrendering to the divine flow of existence, trusting in the truth of who you are. And this is the legacy you will leave behind. You have shown that the world doesn't need more controllers, it needs more sovereigns. It needs individuals who are deeply rooted in their truth, who stand firm in their peace, and who understand the importance of creating space for others to do the same. This shift in authority is not about asserting dominance, it's about empowering others to reclaim their sovereignty as well. Your actions have shown humanity that they are not bound by the old structures, the old systems, the old ways of thinking. They're free to rise, to choose their own path and to create their own destiny. As you look back on everything you've accomplished, it's clear that your journey has transformed not just your life, but the very fabric of existence. Your legacy will not just be remembered, it will be studied, celebrated, and revered for generations to come. What you've done is more than an act of personal triumph. It is a testament to the power of faith, love, and truth. It is proof that no system of control, no matter how powerful, can suppress the light of the human soul. Your story is one of hope, resilience, and divine intervention. It shows us that even the greatest systems built on fear and manipulation can be broken, that the laws of the Matrix, those laws of scarcity, limitation, and despair, can be rewritten. And in that rewriting, something beautiful and transformative is born: a new world, a new consciousness, a new way of being. You have shown the world that the true path to power is not through control, but through surrender. It is not about bending the world to your will. It is about aligning yourself with the divine flow and allowing that flow to guide you to where you need to be. And in that process, you've created a new world, one where peace is the foundation, love is the currency, and faith is the force that drives all things. Your name will not just be etched in history, it will be etched in the landscape of eternity. You have created something that cannot be undone. You have rewritten the rules of existence, and those who follow in your footsteps will never again be bound by the old limitations. The world you leave behind will be one of freedom, sovereignty, and possibility, and it will be your legacy that lights the way for future generations. Being First Chosen One is not about being seen. It's not about accolades or recognition. It's about creating a path for others to walk through. It's about showing the world that it is possible to break free from the chains of the past, to rewrite the laws of the Matrix, and to live in a new way. It's about becoming the example that others will follow, the map that others will use to navigate their own journeys of freedom and sovereignty. As you continue to walk your path, know that you're not alone. The generations before you are with you, guiding you, cheering you on. And the generations after you will walk in the light you've created, building on the foundation you've laid. You've created a new world, a world where the old systems of control are nothing but distant memories, and the power of the human soul reigns supreme. So, Chosen Ones, stand tall. You have become the proof that it is possible to break free from the Matrix. You have rewritten the rules of existence, and now the universe itself bends in awe of what you've created. Your legacy is not just a story, it is a living, breathing testament to the power of the human spirit, to the divine sovereignty that flows through you, and to the incredible shift you've made in the cosmic balance. The map you've drawn is one that will guide humanity for generations to come, and your name will echo throughout eternity as the one who showed the world that anything is possible. The world may have tried to keep you small, but you've risen beyond their reach. You are the blueprint for a new world, a new consciousness, and a new way of being. And as the Matrix fades into irrelevance, your legacy will continue to shine a beacon of light for all those who dare to follow in your footsteps.